Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Yes, welcome. Thank you guys for coming to the screening and for the Q&A.
We just saw episode 8 where we're seeing Ronnie go through even more stuff than he's already been going through, and seems like he's hopefully reaching a point of redemption. What was it like for you to film this episode that's so central to his development?
This was definitely one of the more challenging episodes to film, and partly because we shot stuff out of sequence. We only had Common available for one day of filming. And so we shot that episode, we shot 3 of his episodes in one day, and we shot them when we were still in the 4th episode. So we hadn't even got to this journey of so we shot stuff all out of sequence, and we shot stuff outside, so people would be driving by, shouting out, recognizing him and shouting, "Come in, hell!" And so all the dialogue that you see, there's a previous scene where it's outside we had to do ADR for because people were shouting when they drive by or stopping. Yeah.
So how did you get to that place where you know that this is kind of a turning point in the character's life, even though I guess time-wise you're in the past? How did you make Ronnie get to that point?
I don't know. I'm glad if you feel that he got to that point. I'm not sure. It was just you give over to the words and get to play with Common, and he really, that monologue that he has really resonates, and it's his opening up and sharing that allows Ronnie to sort of open up as well. He becomes his savior in a way. It takes him out and gives him a chance to look up. Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this project? There's been a lot of conversation about the show, especially because of Lena Waithe's creation of it. And, as I'm sure you all know, she was on the cover of Vanity Fair. She's very, very hot right now. So how did you get involved in this project?
The good old-fashioned audition. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had the good fortune to have been cast by Carmen Cuba before, who cast me in the show The Knick, the Steven Soderbergh series. And she brought me in for this, and I almost didn't go in for the audition because I didn't think I was right for the role. I'd never played anything like this before, and I just hadn't seen myself in the role of Ronnie. And the first audition was where he's smoking, he's getting high, talking to dead Coogie, in that scene, which is in episode 2 or 3. So the audition scene was he's high, talking to a dead person. And I was at a loss as to how to even play that. And I went in just basically to tell her thank you for casting me in The Knick, because The Knick had opened up so many doors for me, and I didn't think anything of this. I was like, I'm not right for this. So I didn't do a great job. I just and I think she was like, had you read the script? And I was literally working on a TV show the day before. I was flying to Uganda the day after the audition, and I had skimmed through it. I hadn't even I read the sides, and I was like, I'm not right for this. And let me just go and say thank you for The Knick. And I left, and I was just grateful it was over with because it was uncomfortable. And before I'd got to the car, there was a call from my agent saying she thinks you're right for the role, but she doesn't want to submit the tape that she just made. She thinks, you can do a better self-tape that she'll submit. And then I never did the self-tape. I went to Uganda for the holidays, and I seriously thought they were going to offer somebody else, because there's a lead role in the show, and, you know how it goes. I came back from Uganda from my holidays, Christmas holidays, in a couple of weeks, and they were like, you never sent the self-tape in, and can you do it? And I was like, really? And I did it, and I literally forgot one line. The way it was typed on the page, the character's name wasn't at the top of the page, but there was another line, and I thought it was somebody else's, and it was a pivotal line, and I missed it, and then my sister was helping me, the self-tape, looked at it and said, "You missed this line." So I had to do it all over again. I was just like, oh. So I sent it in thinking it was horrible, and the next thing I was doing was meeting with Rick Famuyiwa, who directed the pilot, and I auditioned, and it was the thing where I couldn't even talk as Ronnie. Like, I didn't know how to talk as Ronnie, so when I went into the audition, I didn't want to say much because I could give it away that I'm not even right for this. So they were asking, how we heard you were in Uganda, or I understand you're expecting your first kid, and I just was like, yeah, just just not wanting to dig a deeper hole for myself. And I did the audition, and Rick got up and gave me a hug, which I was totally baffled by, because I thought I'd sucked, and and then I ended up having to audition like 4 other times for it, and then they wanted to see me for the detective, and I was like, oh, I can play the detective.
Oh, the guy who you end up you're working with, kind of.
And I thought I could nail the detective. I've played detectives before, so. And then it switched again to have me back to test for Ronnie, and now I'm here talking to you, which is surreal. Yeah.
So when you were saying that you didn't think that you were right for it, what was your ideal role?
I don't know that I have an ideal role. In many ways, this, I guess, could be the ideal role because it challenged me in ways that I'd never been challenged before, and I guess that's what we ultimately want as an artist, is to be challenged in ways. And I'd become comfortable in playing roles that were close to me or similar within my wheelhouse, and this was totally outside of that. I'm not from the south side of Chicago. I mean, I grew up in New England. Dad was at Harvard, and my mom's a psychologist, and this world of the south side of Chicago, I just didn't feel I had the right to portray. Like, I hadn't earned it, I felt like. So to have been given the chance was terrifying to do it. And I probably worked harder on this role than anything else I'd done before because of that, because I felt like, it felt foreign to me, or like I had to, in ways, work outside in. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about what that preparation process was like? I know Ronnie has a particular voice, and he's kind of hunched over and stumbling a lot, also because he's been shot. But what was your preparation in trying to embody him?
I don't know. There wasn't like, I really didn't, I don't know if it was more of an instinctual thing, really, because I didn't feel like I knew this past of the character. I never created a past in the way, like, what kind of music he listened to, because I was like, I don't know. And I think I was going to
kind of don't know a little bit. He's
a
little bit mysterious.
Right. And so that blank slate was both an obstacle and sort of a blank slate to sort of play with. Curtis Toller was a special advisor on set who had turned his life around from being a gang member, and I really connected with him in terms of stealing everything I could from him I'd show him my sides and say, would you say anything different, or would you change a line here and there? And whenever he would suggest something, I would steal that. And I was always hovering with him, and I always asked him to be on set when I was shooting. And was just stealing, basically. You're just there to take, anyone who was from Chicago, who was local, who was the age of the Ronnie, I was just hovering and trying to get as much from them, drink as much from them. And then at a certain point was just sort of letting go of expectations. Because I guess in one sense I had an expectation of what the role was, and that I was cast, which changed that. And there's a saying, sometimes if you let go of expectations, you can experience the divine. So for me, it was just letting go of how I expected the role should be played and just giving over. And literally, I wouldn't have things figured out. I would just be like, I have to just say the words and let them come out. And sometimes they'd give a note like, we want you to we need you to match something. And then I couldn't remember what I did because I hadn't thought about it. It was just happening. So that was kind of fun, but terrifying at the same time because like I didn't know if anyone was buying it or if it was good or what. Yeah.
So you mentioned stealing from someone. So do you mean that that person was giving you edits on your lines? Were you improvising at all or changing?
Yeah, there was some stuff I improvised.
Okay.
There was stuff like in the first episode, the pilot, where Ronnie's chasing after a woman on this corner, and it was scripted a certain way. And I asked Curtis, I was like, how would you, if you were approaching this woman, like, what would you say? What would you do in your own words? And he put it in his own words, and I just used that. So in that sense, yeah, I got to steal what his idea of what the role would be and ran with it.
So this is a show when you're part of the main cast, your main character. Would you consider this to be your big break or your most significant role yet, or is there something else that you would think of that way?
This is my biggest work on TV. I've done stage work where I've had lead roles in plays, but in terms of TV, I've been recurring on shows for like 10, 15 years as recurring roles, but never a starring role in a show. So this is definitely the biggest TV gig.
So does this feel like something that you were angling for, or just kind of fell in your lap? What was your goal, say, over the last few years?
The goal is to work. So everyone here knows, and I guess this is like a blessing because this is not like if I'd wished for a series regular role, I would have wished for something where I felt like I could come in and nail it. And this was one where I just was like literally terrified, thinking I was going to get fired. So it was great in the sense that it challenged me, but terrifying in the sense that I wasn't working out of my comfort zone. So careful what you wish for. Yeah.
Well, I'm guessing that in doing something that's not in your comfort zone, you've gotten to grow a lot as an actor.
Well, hopefully, I think it's definitely rearranged my sort of creative process in the sense of embracing the motto of letting go of expectations and hopefully experiencing the divine. So that like someone who comes with a bunch of experience, sometimes it's hard to shift gears or you do certain things a certain way. And so for me, this was a whole new way of creating, which was, I'm grateful for that experience and was terrified that the response wouldn't be what it has, and beyond grateful that I'm able to hear it, to talk to you about it. Yeah.
I know that you're also a photographer, a writer. You wrote a play. You have a lot of other things outside of acting that you're interested in. How do those things work together? How do they influence each other?
I think it's just the curse of being an artist. It's like you have to create regardless of whatever outlet. If I'm not acting, I'm shooting behind the camera. If I'm not shooting, it's just constant, a constant outpouring of translating the world around me in different ways. Yeah.
You mentioned that you grew up in New England. So but you're also Ugandan.
Yes.
So how did you get involved in the arts? Where does that fit into your story?
I think my first thing I did was like in second grade, Peter Pan.
Were you Peter Pan?
That was actually in Boston, in Brookline. I auditioned for Peter, but I didn't get the role. Oh. I was a pirate, and I had a lot of fun. And went to high school in Quebec, and I was like one of the only black kids in the school, and they always did plays like The Diary of Anne Frank or Crucible, and And I was
We
just
had that
offered
at my
to
high
do.
school too.
Yeah, so
There was no role
we
for
can
me.
bond about that. So I mean, I was offered to do lights, and I was, I couldn't. There was nothing for me to do in high school, and I wanted to. I had the desire, and then even in college at the University of Virginia, there were all the main stage productions. There was never really an opportunity for people of color, and so we created our own theater company, the Robeson Players, and did plays by Athol Fugard, and then the production main stage saw a lot of our stuff, and they ended up doing A Raisin in the Sun, and I got to play Walter Lee. But yeah, it was literally, creating our own stuff, creating our own work, and that's part of what I'm trying to do now still, and inspired by Lena as well, because she's creating her own universe. Yeah.
How involved is Lena on the set? Is she there like every day? Is she there giving notes?
No, she wasn't. Maybe she was working with Spielberg. She was doing Master of None. She was collecting Emmys, and she had set her ship on sail with The Shy. So I didn't get to interact with her as much as I had hoped to have. But she was always available. If I have my phone right now, I probably could text her and she would respond before. She's incredible in terms of that. But I didn't get to interact with her physically as much on set. Yeah.
What about the other people who involved, the other writers, directors? What was the process like in working with them, especially since it's a large cast, it's an ensemble cast? What was that process like? There's often multiple writers on each episode,
Yes.
a series of directors.
Yes, we had, the showrunner was on set all the time, Elwood Reed. And when you create something new, the challenge is that it exists in everyone's imagination at first. So everyone has their own perspective of what the piece is. And it's only until it's put on the page or put on the screen that it starts to come together. And so it was really over the course of the series that we shot that it all started to coalesce, because I think certain people had certain visions of certain things, and we had our own interpretations, and it was really until this stuff started to come together. I felt each episode got stronger and stronger, and it was a really collaborative process. The showrunner would literally look at the local hires would be translating some of the stuff they would say to put into the script, and things were very fluid that way.
Going back to your start as an actor, I know you also went to NYU, did an MFA there, and the Moscow Art Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you've got like New Hampshire, Uganda, Quebec, Moscow, a whole bunch of different experiences there. What were those theater and learning acting experiences like at those schools, but also the international influence on you and your work? Can you talk about that?
Well, I think what was great about getting to travel is seeing different approaches. In Moscow, there was the way they dissected the script was completely different, and the physical approach to a role was different, and it's about the craft and really about seeing all the different ways to peel an onion, and that's what's really so fascinating, because we think about, when we're in the States, we really think about, there's the traditional Stanislavski, well, that's Russian, but we think about Meisner or the different approaches we have in the States, and we forget that, in Thailand, there's a whole different approach to the role, or in India, there's a different approach to the role, and I just feel grateful to have studied at the National Theatre in London or in Moscow or at NYU, and see all the different ways of dissecting something and approaching something or getting into something. And in many ways, that helped me with this role, because I had to work from the outside in a way. So it became almost like a technical approach, like the British. There's a famous story about Olivier and Dustin Hoffman that has been repeated ad infinitum, I'm sure, about Olivier just saying to Dustin, why don't you just try acting, my dear boy? Because he had stayed up for 2 nights or something to do this one scene, and Olivier just waltzed in and saw this guy struggling, and saw Hoffman, having stayed up all night to do this particular scene, and said, you should just act. And so for me, this role, I couldn't wake up as Ronnie and inhabit. I didn't feel I had the right to do that, and so I had to go this other route. And it's up to you guys to see if it actually translated. Yeah.
Would you recommend graduate training like that for people who are aspiring actors?
I don't know that I recommend anyone into the arts. I think it's something that you have to have a calling for. I don't know that. I think, yeah, it's something that it's like a magnet that pulls you. If you don't feel that pull, you can't push anyone towards that. Yeah.
A couple more questions before we close. So your name is long and Ugandan, and I'm sure someone at some point tried to tell you to shorten it or maybe go by Nate or something like that. No, that never happened?
No one's told me to go by Nate.
But did you have some pushback from people who didn't want you to use your full name?
Maybe there's been pushback in their own circles, but no one's come up to me and said, you need to change your name or do anything.
Okay,
No.
that's good, because I hear so many stories about people who are told that their names aren't palatable, especially if they have ethnic names.
Well, I was brought up with a great deal of pride about my upbringing and my family, and my father's side is from the royal family in Ankole in Uganda. My grandfather was a chief in the kingdom of Ankole. My mom's side, my grandfather was Archbishop of Uganda, so they instilled in me a great deal of pride. And early I would use my first and last name, but I'm also a photographer, and when I was exhibiting my work, I used my full name. And then it just felt weird that on acting, I was just using my first and last and I just wanted everyone to know me as my full name. And so I've always embraced that. So I'm always embracing the complexities that we all come with in our own, whether it's a name or our background or whatever it is. As Lena famously said in her acceptance speech, the things that make us different, those are our superpowers. So I feel like my name is my superpower.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.